Okay, hey people, we are on to our next chapter. We have studied the nature of fashion and the environment, and now we're gonna talk about the movement of fashion, right? So what we're gonna talk about is how fashion is it's always in motion. It's dynamic. It's continuously changing and evolving. So we're going to build on what we learned with the nature of fashion and the environment. So those socio political, economic factors that make up the environment of fashion, and talk about that in terms of the movement. So we're going to talk about the factors that move fashion forward. We're going to in that conversation, we're going to identify some specific, mostly socioeconomic factors that are changing how fashion is viewed. We're also going to predict the movement of fashion, so we're going to talk about the acceleration and deceleration of fashion. We'll talk about those factors. We'll talk about recurring fashion movements, which we're in. Actually, we're always in one, but we're in one now that I identify because it's come back around from when I wore it. We'll talk about adopting fashion, and then we'll talk about leaders and fashion followers. So in the last in the nature of fashion, we talked about trend forecasting, and this time we're going to talk about influencers. So that's what we're going to talk about in this lecture. Of course, this is the theory, and then we will talk about some careers on one of the other tabs. In our conversation about trend forecasting, the role of a trend forecaster, we had a whole host of resources that they use to determine what their forecast would be, and some of these factors we will see recurring, but it's really important that choices are made on some reliable predictions. I always joke about my crystal ball. I wish I just had a crystal ball that I could look into and make all the right decisions, but we can't. But again, there are successful designers and consumers who have a good understanding of basic cycles and some principles and patterns that happen in the fashion world, and they make those predictions based on their understanding, and that's what we talked about. Trend spotters, trend forecasters do, that they are adept. They can hone in to changing factors in the fashion world. So that's what we're going to talk about for the next couple of slides. We're going to specifically talk about three factors that move fashion sometimes forward or sometimes halt it, right? So the three factors are accelerating factors, delaying factors, and recurring factors. And we're going to cover each one of them in the next few slides. As I said in the previous slide, the movement of fashion, right? So the trajectory of fashion can be accelerated or stunted by a variety of factors. And so what we're going to talk about first is we're going to talk about some of the accelerating factors of fashion. And the textbook lists quite a few, and I'm gonna add some to the list. But buying power, it, especially in the role that the way that the world is now, how much money do we have to spend on items of fashion? And when we talk about how fashion has changed over the past 20 years or decade, the movement of fast fashion, so items that are relatively inexpensive, not necessarily well made, but things that clothing being disposable, right? So that buying power has definitely changed. Again, when we look at some of these accelerating factors, they are often the same ones that the trend forecasters use, right? So leisure time. So when we only had to work, we had work clothes, right? We have this extra time in the world to do the other things that make us happy. So leisure time, right? Um, the improved status of women. Again, we talked about that with with trend forecasters, right? So women being able to control their own economic status, right, and be able to make choices without being hindered by a male-dominated society. I'll leave it at that. Those technological advances. So just the internet, the fact that we can buy something at any day, time, any place. I'm gonna be honest. Right before I start recording this lecture, I place order for Joann's for some stuff that I need for a project I'm working on that I'm gonna finish up tonight. So I place the order and I go pick it up when it's ready. So those technological advances, just the ability for us to get what we need, what we want, in a manner that is convenient for us, and it gives us the ability to really shop around and get the best prices. For me, I was using some coupons. I was waiting for things to be on sale, right? So we just really live in an instant world, and technological advances has done that, right? Um, some of the other factors are promotions. Like I said, I just bought stuff on Joann's because of promotions. Like I honestly waited until today because things were 60% off. And again, in that instant world that we live in, with the change in technology, we can plan how we buy, based on the sales promotion. Interestingly enough, some retailers have trained us to buy in a specific way or at a specific time because they offer so many promotions. Like, I'll say I've been trained by Bath and Body Works, right? So only buy candles when they're $10 off, or the hand soap when it's $3.95 or cheaper. So sales promotions, that impact is really felt everywhere, right? And then the other thing is seasonal change. Now, again, we're here in California, so our seasons aren't as drastic as much of the rest of the world. But seasonal change has changed how has changed the role of fashion. And the example that I use is, again, we live in California, so we have access and the ability to go to the beach year round. And if you go into Target has swimsuits year round here in California because we will purchase them year round. And not so much in, some of the colder climates, right? Because that window for them to buy those fashion items are much, much smaller. So now we know what moves things forward. What slows fashion down? Oddly enough, one of the things that moves it forward also it slows it down. So um, the thing that could accelerate or also delay the movement of fashion is buying power. So again, in this time of COVID, we have seen millions, literally 30 million Americans who have seen a reduction in their buying power. So fashion has had to make some adjustments, right? Many stores that were packed. So I've been in Ross probably one time too many. Ross used to be packed with stuff, and now it's very sparsely in Home Goods, which is my favorite store. One of my favorite stores has been very sparsely inventoried, right? They have not been filling the stores, packing the inventory into the stores because they understand that there is a reduction in buying power for most Americans. The other thing is habit and custom, and sometimes it's the acceptance of new styles or prolonged lifespans of those that are already accepted. So the two images that you see here, the image at the top, are kids in traditional school uniforms. That is a habit and a custom, right? These colors may not be a habit or custom, but boys in longer shorts, girls in longer shirts, the Peter Pan collar, short sleeve button up shirt, the knee socks, these are pretty customary. The image on the bottom is an image from the 1920s, and this image cracks me up, actually. because it is literally it is literally women on a beach that were stopped and checked to make sure their bathing suits were not more than 6 inches above the knee, right? So habit and custom. Religion, right? Religion plays a factor um, into the accelerating or delaying factors of fashion, because in staunchly evangelical or religious or conservative, traditional, whatever word you want to use, um, in those religions, they really do stick to a traditional type of dress. So those actually do have delayed reactions. And then the last thing is called Sumtery Laws. And Sumtery Laws in the past were used to uh, regulate who could buy what, right? In the current context, it's more laws that are used to protect, right? So that children's sleepwear is flame retardant, or these types of dyes or pigments can't be used in fabric or textile production in the United States. So, um, you know, that's what part of what this image at the bottom is, right? So the law was women couldn't have a swimsuit more than 6 inches above the knee, which is, the swimsuit is actually hilarious because this is a dress that we would wear now. This is just a mini skirt dress, but that's what women had to wear at the beach, and it had to be black, and there were all these rules surrounding. So these are some of the factors that decelerate, that keep fashion from moving forward. Okay, the other thing that influences the movement of fashion is just the recurrence, right? If you have taken my fashion history class or any history of fashion class, you will see that styles reoccur. We are currently wearing adaptations of what the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans wore, and adaptations just continually happen to suit the time. Occasionally a new look is born, but often it's just an adaptation. And designers actually do keep archives of great pieces that they use for inspiration. So recurrence really isn't that surprising. The image that I have there is of, I don't know which which version of Destiny Child that is. I don't know if that's the first or second iteration. It's definitely not the third. First, second iteration, with the very young Beyonce in the mix, with their Tommy tank tops and varying versions of denim overalls, and that look is current, right? It is on trend right now, right? The image on the left is the rocker, hipster, punk person, right? These are not new, right? The printed tee, um, the dark jean, acid wash or otherwise, and the blazer, and of course the look, right? So fashion does continually occur, and research shows that silhouette. Well, we know silhouettes don't go out of style. They really are basic silhouettes that are, everything else is just a modification of some basic silhouettes. And you, despite widely held opinions to the contrary, there is nothing new that's really created, right? Everything is an adaptation, and I've gotten to the point in my life now where if it still fits, I'm not going to throw it away. If it still fits in a single condition, I'm not going to throw it away, because things do have a tendency to come back. And I've been archiving the things to say the best. And then I've been also more specific with my choices of what I make, so that I'm buying the least amount of fast fashion as possible. But I buy things with the understanding that they're likely to come back in style.